Do not let another healer enter this room. The Alpha King's voice was calm, but every person outside the chamber understood what those words meant. For 3 months, the strongest healers in North Vale Pack had failed. 3 royal physicians had walked into this room, believing they could save their king. None of them had been able to reach the wolf inside him. And now the palace doors opened for Clara Whitmore, a young Omega healer carrying nothing but a worn leather bag and the quiet confidence of someone who had never needed a crown to know her worth. The guards looked at her like she had made a mistake. The council members looked at her like she was the mistake. "You're sending an Omega?" one elder whispered. "To treat the Alpha King?" Clara heard every word. She simply adjusted the strap of her bag and walked forward. She had spent her entire life being underestimated. A village healer. A nobody from the outer territory. The kind of person powerful wolves forgot existed until they needed something only she could do. The Royal Medical Tower was colder than she expected. The stone walls carried centuries of pack history, and every portrait seemed to watch her as she passed. At the end of the hallway stood 2 guards beside a heavy wooden door. Neither of them reached for the handle. "No one stays inside with him for long," one guard said quietly. Clara looked at him. "Why?" The guard hesitated. "Because everyone is afraid of what happens when his wolf wakes up." Clara placed her hand on the door. Before she could knock, a deep voice came from the other side. "If you are here to tell me I am dangerous, leave." Clara froze for half a second. Not because she was afraid. Because she heard something underneath the anger. Exhaustion. "I'm not here to tell you that," she answered. "Then why are you here?" "To find out what everyone else missed." Silence followed. Then the door unlocked. Inside, Alpha King Alexander Ravenshade stood near the window overlooking the kingdom below. He was exactly what the stories described. Tall, controlled, powerful. The kind of alpha who could quiet an entire room without raising his voice. But Clara noticed something nobody else had. His hand was pressed tightly against his side, not from pain, but from restraint. His wolf was fighting him. "You should leave," Alexander said. "Most people do." Clara opened her bag and removed her healer tools. Most people were probably trying to fix the wrong thing. His expression changed slightly. Surprise, annoyance, maybe even curiosity. "You believe you know more than royal healers?" "No," Clara replied. "I believe I listened better than they did." For the first time, the room became completely still. Then something impossible happened. The presence inside Alexander shifted. His wolf, the creature that had rejected every healer, every physician, every person who came near him, went quiet. Not calm, not asleep, listening. Alexander noticed it too. His eyes moved toward Clara. "What did you do?" Clara looked around the room, confused. Nothing. But she knew that wasn't true. Because the moment she stepped closer, she felt something she had never felt before. A connection. A recognition. Not a promise. Not an answer. Just the beginning of something neither of them understood. And for the first time in months, the Alpha King's wolf was not fighting. It was waiting. "The first thing I noticed was not his illness," Clara said quietly. "It was the fact that his wolf was trying to protect him from everyone." The words stayed in the room longer than anyone expected. Alpha King Alexander Ravenshade stood across from her, watching carefully. Most people lowered their eyes when they spoke to him. Clara did not. Not because she lacked respect, but because she was too focused on understanding what was happening beneath the surface. For years, healers had treated the symptoms. They measured his strength, checked his physical condition, and recorded every strange reaction from his wolf. But none of them had asked the simplest question. Why was his wolf afraid? Alexander walked toward the table slowly. "You think my wolf is afraid?" Clara looked at him. "I think your wolf has been carrying something alone for a very long time." His expression hardened. It was a small change, but Clara noticed it. A slight movement in his jaw. A quiet shift in his shoulders. She had spent years treating animals because they never lied the way people did. A wolf could hide pain. A horse could hide exhaustion. But their instincts always told the truth. "You speak about my wolf as if you know him," Alexander said. Clara glanced toward the empty space beside him, feeling the powerful presence she had sensed earlier. Not know him. Listen to him. For a moment, Alexander said nothing. Then the door opened, and Lord Everett Blackthorne entered with several council members behind him. The atmosphere changed immediately. These were not healers. These were people who measured every decision by power and reputation. "Your Majesty," Everett said, looking at Clara. Surely we are not allowing an untested Omega to make judgments about the Alpha King's condition. Clara felt the old familiar feeling return. The feeling of being seen as smaller before she even spoke. But she had learned a long time ago that being underestimated could become an advantage. I am not making a judgment, Clara answered. I am making an observation. Everett raised an eyebrow. And what exactly have you observed? Clara looked at Alexander. Then at the council. That everyone in this room is afraid of his wolf. But nobody has tried to understand him. The silence afterward was uncomfortable. Alexander looked away for a moment, as if her words had reached a place he did not want anyone to see. Everett stepped closer. Careful, healer. The Alpha King is not a wounded animal from some village stable. Clara stayed calm. I know. He is a king. That is exactly why everyone keeps forgetting he is also a person. Even Alexander seemed surprised by that answer. Later that evening, Clara was given a temporary room inside the royal medical wing. She expected guards watching her every move. She expected whispers. She expected suspicion. What she did not expect was a quiet knock at her door. When she opened it, no one was there. Only a small silver wolf mark carved into the wooden floor. A symbol connected to the Alpha bloodline. Clara touched it carefully and felt a strange warmth pass through her hand. Not magic. Not a command. Something gentler. Recognition. Somewhere deep inside the palace, Alexander stood alone in his study, staring at the same mark appearing on his own hand. His wolf had made a choice. And for the first time in years, Alexander was not sure whether that choice frightened him or gave him hope. You are the first person who has ever walked into this room and looked at me like I was not a threat. Alexander Ravenshade's voice was quieter than usual, almost as if he was surprised by his own words. Clara Whitmore stood beside the open window of the Royal Medical Wing, watching the morning fog cover the valley below. She had expected anger from the Alpha King. She had expected pride. She had expected the cold distance everyone warned her about. What she did not expect was honesty. Maybe because I do not think you are one, Clara replied. Alexander looked at her carefully. You do understand that most people would never say that to me. Most people are probably too busy being afraid of losing their position. A small silence followed. Then, something unexpected happened. The corner of Alexander's expression almost changed. Not a smile. Not quite. But close enough that Clara noticed. It was the first sign that beneath the crown, beneath the power, there was still a person trying to breathe. Over the next few days, Clara continued her work with the Alpha King. The royal physicians watched from a distance, waiting for her to fail. The council waited for proof that an Omega healer did not belong near the leader of North Vale Pack. But Clara did not try to impress them. She focused on what she had always done. She listened. Every morning, she checked Alexander's condition. Every afternoon, she studied the connection between him and Vesper, his wolf spirit. She discovered something unusual. Vesper was not attacking his control. It was reacting to the walls Alexander had built around himself. You keep forcing him away, Clara said one evening during their session. Alexander crossed his arms. Because control is what keeps a pack safe. Control keeps a pack organized, Clara answered. Trust keeps a pack united. The words hit harder than he expected. Alexander had spent years believing leadership meant never showing weakness. A king who hesitated could be challenged. A king who cared too much could be manipulated. A king who trusted the wrong person could lose everything. Clara saw the conflict on his face. Who taught you that you have to carry everything alone? She asked. For a moment, the room felt colder. Alexander turned toward the window. Someone I trusted once made me believe loyalty was the same as obedience. Clara did not push further. She understood something about wounds. Some healed faster when touched. Others needed patience. Later that night, Clara walked through the palace gardens to gather herbs for the next treatment. She heard footsteps behind her and turned, expecting a guard. Instead, it was Alexander. No armor. No council. No symbol of the throne. Just a man walking beneath the moonlight. You should have more guards around you, Clara said. You are the Alpha King. Alexander looked at her. And you are the only person in this palace who tells me when I am being unreasonable. Clara smiled slightly. Someone has to. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Clara felt it again. That strange connection between them. A quiet pull. A feeling that something ancient was recognizing something it had been searching for. Alexander noticed her expression. You feel it too. Clara looked away. I do not know what it is. Neither do I. And for once, the Alpha King admitted something without fear. He did not know everything. He did not have every answer. But standing there beside Clara, he realized something that unsettled him more than any threat. The first person who made his wolf feel calm was also the first person who made him want to stop hiding. "You are not healing the wolf inside me," Alexander Ravenshade said quietly. "You are teaching him that he does not have to fight alone." Clara Whitmore looked up from the notes in her healer journal. For a moment, she forgot that the man standing in front of her was the Alpha King of Northvale Pack. She only saw someone who had finally admitted the truth out loud. Over the past week, something had changed inside the palace. The whispers were still there. The council members still watched her every move. But the fear surrounding Alexander was beginning to fade. Not because he had become less powerful. Because people were starting to see the person behind the title. Every morning, Clara continued her treatments with Alexander and Vesper. She learned that the connection between an alpha and his wolf was not built on control. It was built on understanding. "Your wolf is not your enemy," Clara told him during one session. Alexander sat across from her, quiet and thoughtful. "You say that as if it is simple." Clara smiled slightly. "It is not simple. Most important things are not." For the first time, Alexander allowed himself to relax instead of constantly measuring every word, every movement, every emotion. The change was small, but Clara noticed. The tension in his shoulders disappeared faster. His wolf no longer reacted with suspicion every time someone entered the room. Even the royal guards began noticing something unusual. The Alpha King, who once spent every moment surrounded by duty, was beginning to laugh again. It was not often. It was not loud. But it was real. One afternoon, Clara found herself in the royal training garden with Alexander. She was checking the herbs growing along the stone path when Vesper's presence suddenly appeared stronger. Clara stopped. "Something is wrong." Alexander immediately became alert. "What did you feel?" She looked around carefully. "Your wolf is not angry. He is warning us." Alexander studied her expression. "About what?" Before Clara could answer, a messenger arrived from the council chamber. Lord Everett Blackthorne requested Alexander's immediate presence. The timing felt strange. Too perfect. Alexander noticed it too. "You think this is connected?" Clara nodded. "I think someone is watching for a weakness." Alexander's expression became colder. The king returned for a moment. The man who carried the weight of an entire pack. "Everyone expects an alpha to have no weaknesses," he said. "They forget that every alpha is still a person." Clara looked at him. "Then let them remember." That evening, Alexander brought Clara to the old royal archive, a place few people outside the council were allowed to enter. He showed her ancient records about alpha and wolf bonds. "My ancestors believed a true leader was not the one who controlled everything," he explained. "It was the one who understood what he was responsible for protecting." Clara ran her fingers over an old family record and felt a strange echo of emotion. Not words, not memories, but a feeling left behind. Fear, regret, and a warning. She looked at Alexander. "Someone in your family knew this was coming." His expression changed. "What do you mean?" Before Clara could explain, the archive doors opened. Lord Everett stood there with 2 council members beside him. His expression was polite, but his eyes were cold. "Your Majesty," he said, "I believe we need to discuss the Omega healer who has gained unusual influence inside this palace." Clara felt the atmosphere shift. Alexander stepped slightly forward, not to hide her, but to stand beside her. For the first time, everyone in the room saw it clearly. The Alpha King was no longer fighting his wolf, and he was no longer standing alone. An Omega healer with no royal blood should not have access to the Alpha King's private records. Lord Everett Blackthorne's voice carried through the archive hall, calm and controlled, but every word was meant to create doubt. Clara Whitmore stood beside Alexander Ravenshade, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. A week ago, she had been a stranger in the palace. Now, the council was watching her like she had changed the balance of the entire kingdom. Alexander looked at Everett without moving. "She has access because I allowed it." Everett gave a polite smile. "That is exactly what concerns us, Your Majesty." The council members exchanged quiet looks. They were not accusing Clara directly. They were doing something more dangerous. They were planting questions. Was she influencing the Alpha King? Was an Omega healer becoming too important? Was Alexander allowing personal feelings to interfere with his responsibility to the pack? Clara understood politics. She had grown up watching powerful people hide their intentions behind careful words. But she also understood Alexander now. She could see the way he held himself when the council challenged him. The way he became colder. The way he tried to become only a king and forget the man underneath. "I did not come here to gain power," Clara said. Everyone turned toward her. Everett raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you here?" Clara looked at Alexander for a moment before answering. "Because your Alpha King was suffering, and nobody wanted to admit it." The room became silent. Alexander's expression changed slightly. Not anger. Something closer to surprise. No one spoke about his struggles. No one dared. But Clara had never been good at pretending not to see the truth. After the meeting, Alexander walked with her through the palace gardens. The evening air was cool, and for once there were no guards, no council members, and no expectations surrounding them. "You should have been more careful," Alexander said. Clara looked at him. "Because I told the truth?" "Because people punish those who do." Clara smiled softly. "That sounds like something a person says when they have spent too much time protecting everyone else." Alexander stopped walking. The words reached deeper than she expected. "You always do that." "Do what?" "You look at me like you already know the answer before I speak." Clara looked away toward the gardens. Not the answer, just the feeling behind it. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Vesper's presence appeared between them, calmer than ever before. Clara felt the wolf's emotions clearly. Not fear, not anger, trust. Alexander noticed her expression. "You can feel him." Clara nodded slowly. "He trusts me." Alexander looked down. He rarely trusts anyone. Maybe because he was waiting for someone to listen. Those words stayed with him. Later that night, Alexander entered his private study and found an old royal document placed on his desk. There was no name attached. No explanation. Only one sentence written across the page. "The alpha who ignores his bond will lose his pack." Alexander stared at the message. He had spent years believing his greatest duty was to appear unbreakable. But now he wondered if hiding every weakness had created the very danger he feared. Across the palace, Clara felt the same strange connection she had felt before. A quiet pull. A reminder that whatever existed between them was growing stronger. Not because of a title, not because of power, but because somewhere between healing a wounded wolf and understanding a lonely king, they had started becoming something neither of them could easily ignore. "You need to understand something, Clara. The moment the pack believes you are important to me, they will stop seeing you as a healer." Alexander Ravenshade stood beside the balcony overlooking the capital, his expression unreadable. "They will see you as a weakness." Clara watched the city lights below. For the first time, she heard something different in his voice. Not anger, not pride, fear. "You think protecting me means pushing me away?" Clara said. Alexander did not answer. Because she was right. Since the council meeting, the pressure inside North Vale Pack had grown. Rumors moved faster than truth. Some said Clara had changed the Alpha King. Others said she had become too powerful. The council did not need proof. They only needed doubt. And doubt was dangerous in a pack built on loyalty. Lord Everett Blackthorn used that doubt carefully. He requested investigations. He questioned decisions. He reminded everyone that an Alpha King had to put the pack before personal feelings. Alexander knew the rules. He had lived by them his entire life. But now every rule felt harder to follow, especially when Clara was involved. "I can leave," Clara finally said. Alexander turned immediately. No, the answer came too quickly. Clara noticed. So did he. For a moment, the silence between them said more than words could. Alexander looked away. "The palace is not safe for you politically." Clara gave a small, almost amused smile. "You are worried about politics, not my safety?" "I am worried about both." "That sounds like a very complicated way of admitting you care." Alexander almost responded, but stopped himself. The old version of him would have denied it. The old version would have chosen distance because distance felt easier. But Vesper had changed. And maybe he had changed too. Later that day, Clara continued her research in the royal archives. She wanted to understand the message Alexander found. "The alpha who ignores his bond will lose his pack." The words bothered her. Not because they sounded like a threat, because they sounded like a warning from someone who had already made the same mistake. While searching through old records, Clara discovered something hidden in the history of North Vale. Previous alpha leaders had always depended on trusted partners who understood their wolves. Not because they were weak, Because leadership was never meant to be carried alone. When Clara returned to Alexander, she found him training alone in the courtyard. The entire area became quiet when he noticed her. "You should not be here," he said. Clara crossed her arms. "You say that every time you want someone to stay." A small silence followed. Then Alexander looked away. "You make everything difficult." Clara smiled. "I think you mean honest." Before he could answer, Vesper appeared closer than usual. The wolf's presence was calm, almost protective. Clara felt something she had not felt before. A connection between three things: the alpha, the wolf, and herself. Alexander noticed her expression. "What is it?" Clara hesitated. "Your wolf is not just accepting me anymore." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Then what is he doing?" Clara looked at him carefully. "He is choosing to trust me." Those words should have comforted him. Instead, they frightened him. Because deep down, Alexander already knew what Clara was afraid to say. The bond between them was becoming impossible to ignore. And if the council discovered the truth before he was ready, they would not see it as a blessing. They would see it as a weakness they could use against him. That evening, Alexander made a decision he believed would protect Clara, a decision that would hurt them both. He called the royal guards and gave a single order. Until further notice, Clara Whitmore is no longer permitted to enter the Alpha chambers. He thought distance would keep her safe. He did not realize that the greatest danger was not the bond between them. It was the people who wanted to break it. "You made the wrong choice." Clara Whitmore's voice was calm, but the disappointment behind it was impossible to miss. Alexander Ravenshade stood across from her in the palace corridor, separated by only a few steps, and yet feeling farther away than ever. "You think sending me away protects me," Clara continued. "But you are only making it easier for the people who want me gone." Alexander's expression remained controlled, but Clara had learned to notice the small signs. The slight tension in his shoulders. The way his eyes avoided hers. The way Vesper's presence inside him became restless whenever they were apart. "I am the Alpha King," Alexander said quietly. "My decisions affect an entire pack." Clara nodded. "I know, but you keep forgetting something." She looked directly at him. "The pack does not need a king who stands alone. It needs a leader who knows who he can trust." For a moment, Alexander had no answer, because every part of him knew she was right. But fear was stronger than logic. He had spent years protecting his position by keeping everyone at a distance. Trust had once cost him everything. He could not allow the same mistake again. Clara returned to the royal medical wing, but things were different now. She was no longer treated like a guest. She was treated like a problem. Guards watched her movements. Council members questioned her work. Even some healers who once respected her began keeping their distance. Lord Everett Blackthorne had done exactly what he wanted. He had turned uncertainty into suspicion. "They believe I changed the Alpha King," Clara told one of the junior healers. The young woman looked nervous. "Did you?" Clara paused. She thought about Alexander before she entered the palace. A man who carried every responsibility alone. A leader who believed emotions were weaknesses. A wolf that had forgotten what trust felt like. "No," Clara finally said. "I just reminded him that he was allowed to be human." Meanwhile, Alexander struggled more than he admitted. The palace looked the same, but everything felt different. The quiet moments were quieter. The meetings felt longer. Even Vesper seemed frustrated. During a council gathering, Everett presented a carefully prepared argument. "Your Majesty, the pack needs stability. Personal attachments can cloud judgment." Alexander looked at the council members surrounding him. Months ago, he would have accepted those words without question. But now he heard something else. Fear disguised as wisdom. Control disguised as loyalty. "You believe trust is a weakness," Alexander said. Everett remained calm. "I believe a king must put duty first." Alexander looked toward the empty seat where Clara used to sit during medical discussions. Duty without compassion becomes nothing more than a command. The room became silent. It was the first time Alexander openly challenged the council's way of thinking. That evening, something unexpected happened. A small royal messenger hawk landed near Clara's window. Attached to its leg was a simple note. No royal seal. No official order. Just a few words written in Alexander's handwriting. "I was wrong." Clara stared at the message for a long time. It was only 3 words. But from Alexander Ravenshade, those words meant more than 1,000 promises. Then the hawk dropped another small piece of paper. This one was older. A hidden record from the royal archive. Clara unfolded it carefully and felt her expression change. Someone had been secretly altering the Alpha King's medical reports for years. Someone had been making his wolf appear more unstable than it really was. And suddenly, Clara understood the truth. The attack against her was never about an Omega healer gaining influence. It was about hiding what happened to the Alpha King long before she arrived. She looked back toward the palace towers. Somewhere inside those walls, Alexander was still fighting the people who wanted him to remain alone. And this time, Clara was not going to stand behind him. She was going to stand beside him. You have been hiding the truth for years. Clara Whitmore placed the old medical records on the council table, her voice steady as every member of North Vale Pack turned toward her. And now you want everyone to believe the Alpha King is the problem. The room went silent. This was the same chamber where powerful leaders had questioned her loyalty, her ability, and her place beside Alexander Ravenshade. But this time, Clara did not stand there as a new Omega healer. She stood there as the person who had uncovered the secret everyone wanted buried. Alexander stood at the head of the room, watching her with a look Clara had never seen before. Not doubt, not fear, trust. The hidden records revealed something that changed everything. For years, reports about Alexander's wolf had been altered. Small details had been changed. Symptoms exaggerated. Concerns rewritten. The goal was simple. Make the pack believe their Alpha King was slowly losing control. Lord Everett Blackthorne stepped forward, calm as ever. These documents prove nothing. An Omega healer with no political experience cannot understand the responsibility of leadership. Clara looked at him. You are right about one thing. Everett smiled slightly. Which part? I do not understand politics the way you do. Clara placed another document on the table. Because I never learned how to hide the truth behind polite words. The council members looked uncomfortable. Alexander remained silent. But Clara knew him well enough now to understand why. He was giving her the chance to speak. He was not protecting her. He was respecting her. That small difference meant everything. Everett turned toward Alexander. Your Majesty, are you truly allowing an Omega to challenge the Royal Council in front of the entire pack? Alexander's expression became colder. I am allowing someone with evidence to speak. Those words changed the room. For years, everyone had seen Alexander as a king who controlled every situation. But now they saw something different. A leader willing to listen. Clara continued explaining what she discovered. The altered reports were not designed to hurt Alexander physically. They were designed to isolate him. To convince the pack that he could not trust his own instincts. To make him believe his wolf was a burden instead of a part of himself. Vesper's presence grew stronger beside Alexander. The wolf that once reacted with suspicion toward everyone now stood calm. The council noticed. The wolf is different, one elder whispered. Clara nodded. Because the Alpha stopped fighting him. Alexander looked toward her. For a moment, the entire room disappeared. No crown, no council, no expectations. Just the quiet understanding between two people who had spent weeks learning how to trust. Then Everett revealed his final argument. He placed an official request before the council. A challenge to Alexander's leadership. The pack deserves certainty, Everett said. If the Alpha King cannot prove his stability, the council must consider new leadership. The chamber erupted with whispers. Clara felt the pressure in the room. This was no longer about her. It was about the future of North Vale. Alexander stepped forward. Years ago, this moment would have made him retreat behind the walls he built around himself. But not now. You wanted proof that I could lead, Alexander said. Then watch carefully. He looked around the chamber. A true Alpha does not lead because everyone fears him. He leads because his pack trusts him. For the first time, Clara saw the Alpha King fully accept both sides of himself. The ruler, the wolf, the man. And she knew the final battle would not be about strength. It would be about truth. A king does not prove his worth by standing above his people. He proves it by standing with them. Alexander Ravenshade's words echoed through the council chamber as every member of North Vale Pack watched in silence. The challenge against him was no longer about rumors or hidden documents. It was about something much deeper. What kind of leader did they truly want? A ruler who demanded obedience through fear? Or an Alpha who earned loyalty through trust? Lord Everett Blackthorne stood before the council with confidence, believing the old ways would protect his position. But the room had changed. The pack had changed. They had seen the truth. They had seen their Alpha King admit uncertainty instead of hiding behind pride. They had seen an Omega healer speak when everyone else was afraid. Clara Whitmore stepped forward with the final evidence. The altered records, the hidden messages, the pattern that showed someone had spent years creating doubt around Alexander's bond with his wolf. She did not speak with anger. She did not seek revenge. The problem was never that the Alpha King was too powerful, Clara said. The problem was that people convinced him he had to carry that power alone. The words reached everyone in the chamber. Even those who had questioned her could not deny the truth. Everett lowered his gaze for the first time. His plan had depended on one thing. He believed Alexander would always choose isolation over trust. He believed a wounded alpha was easier to control. But he never expected Clara. He never expected someone who saw the person beneath the crown. Alexander turned toward the council. For years, I believed leadership meant never showing weakness. His voice softened. I was wrong. The chamber remained quiet. A leader who cannot listen cannot protect his people. A king who cannot trust cannot build anything that lasts. Those words marked the beginning of something new for North Vale Pack. Not because Alexander was stronger, not because he defeated an enemy, but because he finally understood what true leadership required. After the council meeting, Clara stood alone in the palace gardens. The same place where she and Alexander first admitted that something between them was changing. The evening air was peaceful. The kingdom below continued moving forward. You were going to leave after this was over, weren't you? Alexander asked behind her. Clara turned and smiled slightly. I thought about it. Why? She looked toward the palace. Because sometimes people only value what they almost lose. Alexander was quiet for a moment. Then he said, I do not want you here because you saved me. Clara looked at him. Then why? Alexander stepped closer, not as a king giving an order, but as a man finally being honest. Because you reminded me that I was never meant to lead alone. Clara felt the familiar connection between them. The quiet bond that had started with a frightened wolf and a healer who refused to look away. Vesper's presence was calm, peaceful, almost amused, as if the wolf had known the answer long before they did. Months later, North Vale Pack was different. The council became more open. The healers were respected regardless of rank. Omegas who had once been ignored were given opportunities to serve based on their abilities, not their status. And Alexander Ravenshade became known not as the Alpha King everyone feared, but as the leader who listened when others were silent. Clara continued her work as a healer, helping both wolves and people understand that strength was not the absence of vulnerability. One evening, she found Alexander sitting beside Vesper in the garden. The Alpha King looked at her and smiled. I think my wolf still prefers you. Clara laughed softly. Your wolf has better judgment than you sometimes. For once, Alexander did not argue. Because he had learned the greatest lesson of his reign. Power could command attention. A crown could demand respect. But loyalty, love, and trust had to be earned. And sometimes the person who changes a kingdom is not the one born with power. Sometimes it is the person brave enough to see the truth everyone else ignored.